Brain structure. Now I will be going over the lobes of the brain, change over time, the limbic system, the right and the left hemisphere, as well as more key features. The reason I will be doing this is I have seen questions on paper 3 about the left and the right hemisphere, which is GCSE knowledge, however, it came up. Even though this may be in more detail than needed, it may come up on your paper 3 paper. Some key words you may need to know. Tree planning is to drill holes into the skull, phenomenology, mapping bumps on a person's skull and using this to deduce aspects of their character. Lateralization. The brain has two hemispheres which differentiate. There's evidence in fossil that tree panning was used in connection to migraines and epilepsy, suggesting that over 10,000 years ago, humans had some idea about brain functioning. Hippocrates, a Greek physician born in 460 BC, put forward the idea that each side of the hemisphere had different function. This is the idea of lateralization. 19th century phenotology was used by Franz Joseph Gall. The case of finished skates provided more insight in 1849. Broca found the area of the lower left lobe, Broca's area, responsible for motor control, speech production, and if the Broca's area was damaged, the individual could not understand, but they could speak. This is called Broca aphasia. So you definitely need to know about the different lobes of the brain, and you also need to know what is in the different lobes of the brain. For example, the prefrontal cortex is in the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe, it's located in the front of the brain. The main functions are associated with higher cognitive function, including problem solving, decision making, attention, intelligence. The frontal lobe contains the motor cortex, which is responsible for planning and coordination. It also contains the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attaining a higher cognitive function, and the Broca's area, which is responsible for language production. Prefrontal cortex helps with attention, emotion, self-control, and decision-making. The prefrontal cortex takes time to fully mature and doesn't finish fully developing until your mid-20s. Damage to it causes conditions like ADHD or depression. You can strengthen it with mindfulness, learning, and staying active. The temporal lobe is located on both sides of the brain, and its function is to understand language, memory, auditory information processing. The parental lobe. This is located at the top of the brain between the frontal and occipital lobe, above the temporal lobe. The parental lobe is essential for integrating information from the body's senses to allow us to build coherent a picture of the world around us. Stoma 2 sensory cortex. This is receiving and processing sensory information. The parental lobe allows us to perceive our bodies through stoma information, 2 sensory information. It helps us with visual spatial processing, reading, and number representations. The occipital lobe is located at the back of the brain behind the temporal lobe and the parental lobe, and below the occipital bone. It receives sensory information from the visual data. Some functions include being able to access size, depth, distance, determine colour of information, object, and facial recognition, as well as mapping the visual world. It contains the primary cortex, which receives sensory information. The limbic system is a complex network of interconnected brain structures that plays a vital role in regulating human behaviour, emotion, especially those tied to survival instincts. It contributes significantly to memory processing and motivation. Parts of the limbic system are the thalamus, the pineal gland, the hippocampus, the cerebellum, the amygdala, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, the cerebellum, and the basal ganglia. Thalamus. It relays information between the cerebral cortex and the brainstem. It has an interactive role in relaying sensory information and motor information. It contributes to many purposes, for example, attention, preparation, and timing. The pineal gland regulates the sleep-wake cycle and circadian rhythms by producing melatonin in response to light and dark signals. Melatonin also impacts moods. The hippocampus is associated with learning and memory. It plays a key role in forming memories, serves as an early storage system for long-term memories, and helps to convert memories into permanent memories. The cerebellum plays a key role in physical coordination as well as regulating emotions and thoughts. It's located in the back of the brain behind the brainstem and aids in motor skills. The amygdala is involved in processing emotions and fear. It ties emotions to meaning, processing of rewards, and helps us to make decisions. It's linked to fight or flight. It's associated with emotions and aggression. The left side of the amygdala links to the reward pathway and positive and negative emotions. The right side of the amygdala links to negative emotions and sadness. The pituitary gland is also known as the master gland. It releases hormones into the bloodstreams and forms a crucial link between emotion processing, survival behaviors, and hormone regulation. Hypothalamus modulates range and physiological functions, controlling autonomic functions, for example, hunger. It integrates information from parts of the brain and responds to various stimuli. The hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland and is responsible for stimulating or controlling the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. Cerebellum monitors and regulates behaviors. It helps posture and balance. The basal ganglia is a group of structures that regulate the coordination of fine motor movements, balance, and posture alongside the cerebellum. The basal ganglia is connected to motor areas and links the thalamus with the motor cortex. It is involved in cognitive emotions and behavior. The cerebellum is the largest part of the brain. It consists of grey matter and white matter. It contains the lobes of the brain, the frontal lobe, the parental lobe, and the occupational lobe. It produces a high-functioning role, and it is also divided into the right and left hemispheres. The left hemisphere controls the right-hand side of the body and receives information from the right visual field, controlling speech, language, recognition of words, letters, and numbers. The right hemisphere controls the left-hand side of the body and receives information from the left visual field. It controls creativity, context, recognition of objects, places, and faces. The left and the right hemisphere is connected by the corpus callosum, which allows the two hemispheres to communicate and allows information being processed on one side of the brain be shared with the other side of the brain. Finally, ventricles produce cerebral biospinal fluid, which helps cushion the brain from any blows to the head and provide nutrients. High pressure leads to blockage in ventricles, which can cause hydroxydothalamus. The hypothalamus regulates eating, drinking, and motivated behaviors. The hippocampus, the short-term memory passed to the long-term memory through the hippocampus. The cerebellum coordinates movement and balance as well as stores memory and learning skills. It's vital in balance and coordination. The medial temporal lobe, you control this down to MTL. This plays a large role in memory, emotion processing, and it's where the hippocampus is located. The striatum plays a role in motivation. Lastly, the thalamus acts as a brain relay station, processing and directing sensory and motor signals to the correct areas of the cerebral cortex. People with schizophrenia were found to have a significantly reduced volume compared to those without schizophrenia. Midbrain contains an area called the pre-anterior grey matter, or PAG, which links the amygdala to the hypothalamus with the prefrontal cortex. It has a role in coordinating and integrating behavioral responses to perceived internal and external stresses, such as pain and threat. Supporting research is Lowenstein and Stern, 1988. Lesions to PAG in rats were shown to increase aggression when rats were confronted with potential threats in the form of unfamiliar male rats being introduced to the cage. The amygdala is the center for emotions, emotional behavior, and motivation. It integrates internal and external stimuli, and every sensory modality has an input which, when combined, gives us an instinctive feeling or reaction to the environment, which will include aggression. The prefrontal cortex also connects to the amygdala. This connection may lead to aggression. Supporting research, Bufkin and Luttrell, 2005. They carried out a meta-analysis where they analysed results in 15 brain studies on aggression. They found all brain scans had a less active prefrontal cortex and amygdala, which led to aggression and aggressive behaviours. Thalamus. The role of the hypothalamus is to maintain homeostasis through the regulation of hormones, including the regulation of sexual functions. This is linked to aggressive behaviour in males via the production of testosterone. Supporting research, Egger and Flynn, 1963. Egger and Flynn found that electrically stimulating parts of the amygdala would either increase or suppress aggression. In their study, they also demonstrated this by stimulating areas of the hypothalamus, causing cats to show aggressive behaviour towards rats. This suggests the hypothalamus has a role in aggression. Prefrontal cortex is an area in the brain that sits right behind the forehead. It influences social interactions and regulation of behaviour. Prefrontal cortex damage has connections to the amygdala and hypothalamus. Damage to this area often leads to a problem with anger management, irritability, and impulse control. Supporting research vein, he wanted to find out the difference in brain structure between NGRIs and non-murderers. He found that there was less activity in the frontal lobe, especially in the prefrontal cortex. Limbic system. The limbic system includes the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the hypothalamus. It has a role in self-preservation and fight-or-flight response. It's responsible for controlling emotions and for focusing attention on events that are emotional for the individual and links the thalamus to the hippocampus. Supporting research is Andy and Val Lamarty, 1987, which stimulated parts of the hypothalamus and basal ganglia, parts of the limbic system of cats, and had aggressive seizures. Phineas Gage's brain damage led to his understanding that a damaged prefrontal cortex could increase aggression. Studies in rodents like cats have found that different areas of the brains are associated with different things. Studies in rodents of cats have found that different areas of the brains are associated with different types of aggression. Offensive behaviours is associated with the middle of the hypothalamus. Defensive behaviour is associated with the dorsal back of the hypothalamus, and predatory behaviour is associated with the side of the hypothalamus. Issue of social control. The application of these findings can be used to treat aggressive patients by performing lobotomies to the prefrontal cortex, which subdue emotions and emotional reactions. As well as this, we can start looking at people who have an overactive amygdala before they've committed a crime. This proves to say that we do not know the cause and effect relationship. We do not know if the crime is caused by brain structure or if brain structure is there in the first place. Animal evidence cannot be generalized to humans, as this is reductionist. Also, humans are logically driven by their actions. It's not just instinct. We can think about things like morality. Animals can't. However, animals do share basic functioning. Mice share 70% of the same brain structure to humans. Scanning is reliable, but validity is questionable, as this measures processing of an artificial task which are not like real life. Ethical issues of using animals and performing lobotomies counterbalance with the other explanations like evolutionary approach, and this only considers nature not nurture, for example family background needing money or the psychodynamic approach. There's a lot of supporting evidence from case studies and animal studies, as you've seen. We now have more accurate scanning techniques like PET scans and fMRIs. We use standardized scientific procedures to make it a reliable way to diagnose and test aggression. Genetic research supports these findings.